offended is a choice. Emotions, of course, will rise after a hurtful comment. You'll feel anger, sadness, or frustration, but being offended depends solely on how you decide to react to it. In this video, I'm going to talk about microaggressions, the importance of intent over impact, and how to deal with offensive comments. But first, hurry and subscribe to this video so you can be notified when my new videos come out. We live in a society that is under emotional bondage of offense. We are offended by everything: a toy potato, a flying cartoon character, tall skinny things and white things and black things. And we became so offended by everything that we couldn't even live with it, so we had to cancel it. And now we're asking white people to be less white, good policemen to stand down, respected professors to resign, and opinions to be silenced. Because we have become so emotionally driven that when we have a flash of negative feelings, we embrace that feeling and then we label ourselves as victims of aggression or microaggression. But when you allow someone to offend you, you freely give them your power. You're allowing them into your mind and into your space and your energy and your heart. A strong-minded person doesn't give people that power because they understand that their power is within. It's in your self-confidence and your self-approval and how you decide to view yourself. Unfortunately, how we view ourselves often has to do with how we believe others view us, because as children, we couldn't validate ourselves apart from how we felt our family valued us. So many of us grew up with certain beliefs and labels that we were the trouble child, the naughty child, weak, a pushover, lazy, or unintelligent, etc. And for too many of us, even as adults, we rely on others' approval to be able to approve of ourselves. And this is why it's so extremely important that we learn to validate ourselves instead of relying on outside validation for our self-worth. Find confidence in how you view yourself. Speak kindly to yourself every day and look in the mirror and tell yourself 5 things you love about yourself. So then when people say mean things to you, because people say mean things and do mean things all the time, you don't have to let it affect your inner peace and your self-confidence. But what I really want to touch on is what we have termed microaggression. This term has been defined as brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized groups. A lot of words there, but the problem with this term and its definition is that it encourages people to lead with emotion, then justify their emotion through finding offense without even considering a person's intent. Then they conclude that someone has committed an act of aggression towards them, so now the offense is entirely based on the listener's interpretation, because that definition says whether it's intentional or unintentional, it's still aggression. Some examples are asking an Asian person to teach them some words in their language, or saying that America is a melting pot, or I believe the most qualified person should get the job. And these all hinge on the fact that listeners get to choose to interpret the statement in a way that makes them feel insulted or marginalized. And although these comments could possibly be meant this way, it's still damaging to teach people to take offense by such statements. Because if you feel this flash of offense, this emotion rising by such a microaggression, are you better off embracing that feeling and labeling yourself as a victim? Or are you better off asking yourself if there's a more charitable way to interpret such statements? Of course, whether the offense was intended or not, when you choose to interpret it in a non-offensive way, you keep your power, you keep your peace and your self-confidence, and you don't let it affect you. So really, it benefits you almost more than them. And really, when someone says something hurtful, our interpretation of that hurtful comment really depends on the amount of value that we put on other people's opinions. That's why I always encourage people to, take it with a grain of salt, because there might be some truth to the comment and it might be completely false. For example, someone tells me that I have a booger hanging out of my nose, and I could choose to look at myself in the mirror and see if I have a booger in my nose, or maybe it wasn't true and they just wanted me to feel embarrassed, but at least I could check myself. So the first thing to do when you hear a hurtful comment is to ask yourself, are they intending to hurt you? Intent is always more important than impact. Intent is essential for assessing guilt. We hold people accountable for acts that are intended to commit. If someone tries to poison me and fails, they still committed a very serious crime. Aggression is not accidental. If you accidentally bump into someone at the grocery store, it's not an act of aggression, even if the other person decides to misperceive it as one. When we lead with our emotions, we're more easily offended. We start with our feelings and then we have to justify those feelings by drawing the conclusion that proves that our offender has committed an act of aggression against us. And that conclusion could be correct in some instances, but it's important to find out whether our aggressor actually feels hostility towards us or not. Did they intend to hurt us, or were they just oblivious? It is not okay to start by assuming the worst about people. This is called mind reading, and that leads to despair, anxiety, and damaged relationships. So number 2 is consider your source. And is there any truth to what they're saying? If so, is it something that I can change and improve or not? If not, then seriously forget about it. If they make fun of your height, please don't listen to them. You can't change that. But if they tell you you're mean, you might want to question whether you're being rude to people without realizing it. Think, if you could focus more on criticism that's received and how you can use it to make yourself better, do you know how much further you would be in life? Number 3 is question if your reaction comes from your ego. Ego is the image that we have of ourselves, and we will be offended by criticisms if our ego is overly inflated. For example, someone gives you pointers to improve your singing. You would take it as an offense if your ego was telling you that you don't have any flaws, so how dare someone assume you do? At one time or another, we've all no doubt experienced assaults on or challenges to our sense of pride, dignity, or self-respect, or maybe to our self-image generally. Because our self-confidence or self-esteem may not have been sufficiently anchored from within, our ego feels attacked, and so we feel compelled to push back against the people who, in that very moment, felt like our enemy. Number 4, stop looking for things to be offended by. We find what we look for, and when it comes to being offended, nothing could be more true. But if you can change the way you look at things, the way you look at things will change. Give others the benefit of the doubt and assume the best intentions, and then learn to have this conversation. Hey, so I don't know if you realize that what you said can come across as rude or offensive to some people. Most likely, the offender did not intend to offend. It's crucial that we learn to deal with offensive comments, statements, and microaggressions because it's crippling us, our families, our churches, and our communities. You ruin your own life when you become emotionally ruled by people, ruled by fear, sorrow, depression, shame, or how you feel today because of how you have been treated. In my next video, I talk about staying in your circle of control. You can't control what others think of you or what they say about you, but you can control what you say and think about yourself, and that is so powerful. And you will gain so much power and freedom and liberation in your life when you can realize that idea and begin practicing it. So please like and subscribe and leave a comment letting me know what you think, or if you have questions or insights about the topic. You can also email me at stories@lifeenvisioned.com. I'll see you in the next video.